We meet again here for this Daily Bread Bible study for day 246 for Wednesday, September 2nd, 2020, focusing on Ezekiel chapters 31 through 32. In Ezekiel 31, God then speaks a warning, again against Egypt, using the once mighty and now fallen Assyrian nation as an illustration. In verse 3, consider Assyria, a cedar of Lebanon with fair branches and forest shade, and of great height, its top among the clouds. In verse 10, therefore, thus says the Lord God, because it towered high and set its top among the clouds, and its heart was proud of its height. I gave it into the hand of the princes of the nation, and he has dealt with it as the wickedness deserves. I've cast it out. So, the reference to Babylon coming and sacking Egypt. Now, the time of destruction and war is referenced as, quote, going down to Sheol. Sheol is the place of the dead, the pit, the grave, all used to reference Sheol. So, this is the analogy. This analogy is a word of judgment to Egypt. Really, in verse 18, it summarizes what it wants to speak to Egypt. Now you shall be brought down with the tree of Eden to the world below. You shall lie among the uncircumcised, with those who are killed by the sword. This is Pharaoh and all his horde, says the Lord God. So all of this calamity upon Egypt continues. Today it continued from last time. It continues even into chapter 32. With more imagery used against Egypt, starting in verse 4 or 3. Thus says the Lord God, I am in an assembly of many peoples. I throw my net over you, and I will haul you up in my dragnet. I will throw you on the ground. On an open field I will fling you, and will cause all the birds of the air to settle on you. And I will let the wild animals of the earth gorge themselves on you. This is an imagery to Egypt being this water entity that is taken in a net and captured and then thrown out and brought into the shore and just thrown out to die there without life-sustaining water. And so all of these other nations, these birds and these wild animals will take care of Egypt. At the same time, all of this destruction on Egypt is not without some lamenting of it. Really, all the nations connected with Egypt get a lament here in verse 32, or chapter 32, verse 15. When I make the land of Egypt desolate, and when the land is stripped of all that it fills, when I strike down all who live in it, then they shall know that I am the Lord. This is a lamentation. It shall be chanted. The women of the nations shall chant it. Over Egypt and all its hordes, they shall chant it, says the Lord God. They're crying about the destruction, about the ways in which that Egypt was prideful, Egypt was glorious, it was a mighty empire, but at the same time, it gets destroyed as well. So the nations go down to Sheol, the place of death, in verse 21. The mighty chiefs shall speak of them, and with their helpers out of the midst of Sheol, they have come down, they lie still, the uncircumcised, killed by the sword. This group includes Assyria and Elam, Sidon and Meshech and Tubal. So all of these areas around, in some sense, in some sense, both face the judgment of the nations from God. At the same time, too, experience the destruction, but also will experience God's blessings. Once the time of Babylon and the rule comes to an end, once Cyrus of Persia takes over that area, then the peoples of the land are able to live in peace. They're able to live in their own places. They're able to go back and return to the homelands that they come from. And all that learning, that humility, that exile especially for Judah, because that's the focus of the Bible, but for all of the nations. I imagine it was a humbling time and made them think more critically about where do they put their trust and how do they interact with those around them. May we not be a lofty tree with our head in the clouds. May we not think too highly of ourselves, but remember that God is the one who gives us height, who nurtures us in our roots so that way we can grow and be upright. And may we never forget the source of all life and being, and that is God.